My daughter, Cassia, stood by the window, her back to me, scrolling through her phone. The doctor had been blunt. A severe internal bleed, likely from a stress-induced ulcer. I needed a transfusion and a long, difficult recovery. My wife Sharon was out of town on a business trip, unreachable. Cassia was my only lifeline. "Honey," I croaked, my voice a dry whisper. "Could you call your mother? And tell the nurse I need more pain medication." She didn't turn around. Her thumb moved methodically across the screen, a small rhythmic motion that felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I tried again, my voice a little stronger this time. "Cassia, please. It hurts." She sighed, a long, impatient sound, and finally turned. Her face was a mask of annoyance. She wasn't looking at me, but at the phone in her hand. "Dad, I told you, Mom's phone is off, and the nurse is busy. I'll do it in a bit." Her words were flat, devoid of warmth. I stared at her, this stranger in my daughter's skin. The girl I had held when she was a baby, the one I had taught to ride a bike, the one I had stayed up all night with when she had a fever. That girl was gone, replaced by this cold, distant woman who couldn't even look me in the eye. A notification pinged on her phone, and a small, genuine smile touched her lips. She finally looked at me, a quick, dismissive glance. "I'm sorry, Dad, my friends are waiting for me. I'll be back in an hour, promise?" Before we dive in, let's connect. If you've ever felt betrayed by the people you love, stay with me. You'll want to hear the rest of my journey. Please hit the like button and leave a comment below. Your stories matter. My heart hammered against my ribs, a desperate drumbeat of panic. "No, Cassia, wait. The doctor said—" The words caught in my throat as she was already out the door, her laughter echoing in the sterile hallway. An hour. I felt the slow, steady drip of the IV, a mocking promise of life. The pain was a living thing, a hungry beast devouring me from the inside. I lay there alone, the silence deafening, the fear a physical weight on my chest. I stared at the door she had left through, waiting for her to come back. An hour turned into 2. 2 turned into 3. The pain turned into a blinding fire, a red haze that consumed my thoughts. My breathing became shallow, ragged gasps. The nurse, a kind woman named Anya, finally found me, her eyes wide with alarm. "Mr. Elias." "Oh my God, you're hemorrhaging again." I watched her scramble, a flurry of panicked motion, but all I could hear was the echoing laughter of my daughter. The memory of her promising to be back in an hour. The world went black. But even in the darkness, the feeling of abandonment was a physical weight. I remember thinking, she won't come back. Not in an hour, not ever. And I was right. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in the ICU, my wife Sharon, weeping over my bed. Her business trip had been cut short, and a frantic call from a nurse had brought her flying back. My body was a battlefield, but the wounds that mattered weren't physical. They were inside, where the betrayal had hollowed me out. The nurse Anya confirmed my worst fear. Cassia had never called. She had never asked for me. She had left me there to die. My wife held my hand, her voice a soft, broken whisper. "I don't understand, Elias. Where was she?" A cold, hard resolve settled in my bones. I looked at Sharon, her face etched with concern, and then at the sterile white walls. I knew where Cassia had been, and I knew exactly what I was going to do about it. The hospital was a tomb, and I was its ghost, but a ghost with a purpose now, a chilling, cold purpose. I was going to make her pay. I felt a surge of strength, not from the blood in my veins, but from the bitterness in my heart. The doctor came in looking grim. He said I was lucky to be alive. That a few more minutes and they would have lost me. He explained the long, difficult road to recovery. But all I heard was the ticking clock, the one that was counting down the hours until I could walk out of here and start my plan. I looked at my wife, her tear-stained face a blur. She didn't know the whole story, not yet. I couldn't tell her. Not until it was over. My daughter's laughter, the one that had echoed in the hallway, now sounded like a death knell, a promise of a revenge that would be swift and brutal. I smiled, a grim, unfeeling smile, and a shiver ran down Sharon's spine. She didn't know what she was seeing. She just thought I was in pain. But I wasn't. I was calculating. And the first person I was going to make pay was my own flesh and blood. My daughter. My betrayer. 2 years before the hospital bed, our life was a perfectly staged photograph. Our sprawling colonial home in the quiet suburbs of Providence, Rhode Island, was a monument to our success. My wife Sharon was a rising star in her corporate law firm. She was a woman of fierce intelligence and a boundless ambition that I had always admired. And then there was Cassia, my daughter, the center of my universe. She was a beautiful, vibrant girl with a laugh that could light up a room. From the moment she was born, she was my little princess. I doted on her, buying her every toy she ever wanted, taking her on trips to Paris and Rome and showering her with a love that I thought was unconditional. But looking back, I realize now it wasn't unconditional at all. It was a love that was blind, a love that saw a daughter, and not the person she was becoming. I had built my company, Phoenix Technologies, from a small garage operation to a multi-million-dollar tech giant. I had poured my blood, sweat, and tears into it. The hours were long, the stress was immense, but I did it all for them. For Sharon, to give her the life she deserved, and for Cassia, to ensure she never had to want for anything. I had told them countless times, "This is all for you. My legacy will be your future." They would smile, but I never saw the true nature of their smiles. Sharon's was a polite, distant expression. Cassia's a look of entitlement. I was the family ATM, the provider, the man who was always working and always tired. I had convinced myself that this was what a father and husband was supposed to do. I had mistaken my tireless labor for love and my gifts for affection. And I had taught Cassia the most dangerous lesson of all, that love could be bought. Cassia was the quintessential it girl in her high school. Popular, beautiful, and effortless in her charm. She had a tight-knit circle of friends, a group of wealthy, privileged kids who spent their weekends at exclusive parties and their summers in the Hamptons. They were her world, and I was just the father who funded it. Her grades were mediocre. Her interest in anything other than social media and shopping was non-existent. But I never pushed her. I told myself she was just being a teenager, that she would find her way eventually. Sharon, on the other hand, was less forgiving. She had tried to set boundaries to encourage Cassia to take her studies seriously, but I had always been the one to intervene. "Let her be, Sharon," I would say. "She's a good kid. She'll grow out of it." My wife would sigh a sound of weary resignation and let it go. We were a family divided, held together by a thin veneer of money and convenience. Our family dinners were a masterclass in polite conversation. We would talk about Sharon's latest court case, Cassia's social life, and my work. But we never talked about what truly mattered. The hollow spaces in our hearts, the growing distance between us, the secrets we were all keeping. My wife and I, we had stopped being lovers and had become business partners. We ran the family, the household, the finances, with cold, efficient precision. And Cassia was our project, a beautifully manicured, spoiled project that was starting to show signs of rot beneath the surface. I saw the signs, but I chose to ignore them. I saw the way her eyes would glaze over when I talked about my work. I saw the way she would feign interest when I asked her about school. I saw the way she would hug me, and her body would feel stiff, unyielding. But I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was just a tired old man. One evening I found Cassia sitting on her bed, her face illuminated by the glow of her phone. She was on a video call, her voice a soft, conspiratorial whisper. I was about to knock to say good night when I heard her say, "He's so oblivious. He thinks I'm going to follow in his footsteps, that I care about all his stupid tech stuff. He doesn't know anything about me." She laughed, a cold, mocking sound that felt like a punch to the gut. "He's just the bank." That's all he's ever been." I froze, my hand suspended in mid-air. The words hung in the air, a cruel, undeniable truth. I had spent my life building a fortress for my family, but I had never realized that I was the one on the outside, looking in. My heart felt like a block of ice. And I knew with a terrible certainty that the perfect family was a lie. A beautiful, tragic lie. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. The perfect family was a carefully constructed fiction, a stage play where I was the main actor, playing a role I didn't even know I was cast in. I started to watch Cassia more closely. I became a ghost in my own home, observing the subtle betrayals and the quiet dismissals. I saw the way she would roll her eyes when Sharon told her to do her homework. I saw the way she would feign a headache to get out of family dinners. I saw the way she would talk about me to her friends, a dismissive tone in her voice, a sneer on her lips. She didn't see me as her father. She saw me as a resource, an unlimited source of money and a shield from her mother's discipline. I started to see the cracks in my wife, too. Sharon was brilliant, but she had grown tired. Tired of being the bad cop, tired of fighting a battle she couldn't win, and tired of a marriage that had lost its spark. I found solace in my work, pouring more and more of myself into Phoenix Technologies. I created a new AI-driven security system, a groundbreaking project that I named Guardian. The irony was not lost on me. I was building a system to protect others, while my own family was falling apart. The AI was a digital ghost, a silent watcher, learning, adapting, and identifying patterns. I spent sleepless nights in my home office, coding, refining, and perfecting. The more I worked, the more I realized that Guardian was more than just a security system. It was a tool of observation, a way to see the world and the people in it without their knowing. And a way to see the truth. I started to feel a terrible, morbid curiosity. What if I could use this technology to truly understand my own daughter, to see what I had been blind to for so long? The idea was a dangerous one, a line I knew I shouldn't cross. But the pain of her betrayal was a physical ache. I needed to know, I needed to see. So I installed a modified version of Guardian on Cassia's laptop and phone. It was a digital whisper, a ghost in her machine, watching her every move, listening to her every conversation. I told myself it was for her own safety, that I was just a concerned father, keeping an eye on his rebellious teenage daughter. But the truth was far uglier. I was a man who had lost his way, seeking answers in the dark. The technology was an unforgiving mirror, reflecting a truth that was 100 times worse than I had imagined. I saw the text messages, the whispered secrets, the cruel jokes at my expense. I saw the pictures of parties I had no idea about. I saw the way she would feign being sick to get out of spending time with me, only to go out with her friends. I learned about her boyfriend, a boy named Caleb, a spoiled and entitled young man who treated her like a trophy. I learned that my daughter was not a good kid, who was just a little lost. She was manipulative, selfish, and entitled. She saw the world as her personal playground and people as pawns in her game. I saw the way she used me, the way she played my wife and I against each other. I saw the way she would pretend to be a victim, to get what she wanted. It was a brutal, heartbreaking education. The perfect family was not just a lie, it was a scam. And I was the mark. My heart, already bruised and battered, was now shattering into 1,000,000 pieces. I had built my company, my life, and my family on a foundation of trust. And now I saw that the foundation was made of sand. The man I had once been, the proud father, the devoted husband, was gone. Replaced by a ghost, a hollowed-out version of myself who was only held together by the cold, hard wire of revenge. The technology I had built to protect my family was now a weapon I would use to destroy it. I sat in my office, staring at the screen, a silent observer of a life that was not my own. The screen showed Cassia at a cafe, laughing with her friends, a ghost in the machine, a silent watcher, and a father who was no longer a father. He was a predator, and he was waiting for the right moment to strike. The first domino had been pushed, and the cascade was about to begin. The day of the hospital scare was a carefully orchestrated performance. My stress-induced ulcer, a real physical manifestation of the pain inside me, had been a ticking time bomb. I had felt the first sharp pain a week before, a searing reminder of the corrosive nature of my daughter's betrayal. I had seen the messages, the plans she was making with her friends. A big party, a concert in the city, an all-night celebration. She had been texting Caleb, telling him about her boring family and how she couldn't wait to be free. I had seen her plans to lie to me and Sharon, to say she was at a sleepover at a friend's house. I knew this was coming, and I saw my opportunity. An opportunity to push her to the edge, to see what she would do, and to confirm the horrifying truth I already knew. When the pain became unbearable, and I knew I couldn't hide it anymore, I called Sharon. I told her the symptoms, and she, being the methodical, practical person she was, immediately booked a flight back. But I had also called the hospital. I had asked them to delay my admission until Sharon was on her way. I wanted to see what Cassia would do. The ambulance ride was a blur of pain, but my mind was razor sharp. I was setting a trap, a cruel, cold trap. When we arrived at the hospital, I had the paramedics call Cassia. I had given her a key to her future, and I wanted to see if she would choose her freedom over her family. She arrived, not with concern in her eyes, but with a look of annoyance. She had a concert ticket in her hand. Her friends were waiting for her. She saw me not as a father in pain, but as an obstacle in her way. The time I spent in the hospital bed was a slow, agonizing test. I watched her, the girl I had given my life to, scrolling through her phone, her thumb a metronome of indifference. Every passing minute was a new wound, a new confirmation of her selfishness. When she finally left, her laughter echoing in the hallway, I felt the last shred of my hope for her die. The pain in my chest was real, a fire eating me alive, but the pain in my heart was 100 times worse. I knew she wasn't coming back. Not in an hour. Not ever. The lie she had told me, the casual promise to return, was the final act of a long-running play of deception. She had chosen her friends, her party, her fun, over her father's life. And in that moment I knew there was no going back. She had sealed her fate. I didn't tell Sharon the whole story when she arrived. I told her I had been alone, that Cassia had left, but I didn't tell her about the messages, the texts, the plans. I couldn't. Not yet. I had to play the victim, the heartbroken father. I had to let her believe that our daughter's betrayal was a momentary lapse in judgment, a tragic mistake. She was a good mother, a loyal wife, and she would defend her daughter until the end. I had to let her see the truth for herself, in her own way and in her own time. I knew that my wife's love for Cassia was fierce, but her love for me was deep and unwavering. I just had to show her what I had seen. I had to show her the monster that was hiding behind our daughter's beautiful smile. As I lay in the hospital bed, the slow drip of the IV a constant reminder of my near-death experience, I made a silent promise to myself. My life had been built on lies, on a beautiful facade of family and love. It was time to tear it down. I would start with the foundation, the money, the legacy I had built for her. I would take it all away. I would leave her with nothing. No money, no future, no escape. I would let her suffer, just as she had let me suffer. I would make her feel the same cold, isolating pain of being left alone, and she would learn the hard way that some things are more important than a party, That some bonds once broken can never be mended. I looked at my wife, her tear-stained face a blur. She didn't know what was coming. She just thought I was in pain. But I wasn't. I was planning. I was plotting. And the game had just begun. The day I was released from the hospital was a strange mix of relief and grim determination. My body was still weak, but my mind was sharper than ever. Cassia, surprisingly, was there. She was a vision of innocence and remorse, a fragile figure with tear-filled eyes telling me how sorry she was. Her performance was impeccable. She apologized for being selfish and thoughtless. Sharon, in her unwavering love for her daughter, was quick to forgive. She pulled Cassia into a tight hug, murmuring reassurances. I watched them, a silent observer, a man who knew the truth. I saw the subtle shift in Cassia's eyes when she thought I wasn't looking, a quick, calculating glance at the door, a flicker of impatience. She was playing a part, trying to get back into my good graces, so she could get back to her life. We returned to our sprawling home, a place that no longer felt like a sanctuary, but a tomb. The air was thick with a false peace. Sharon was busy in the kitchen, fussing over my recovery. Cassia was on her best behavior, asking if I needed anything, bringing me tea, and even offering to help me with my work. The performance was nauseating. I could almost hear the little voice in her head. Just play along and he'll give you the money for that new car you want. But I wasn't a fool anymore. I wasn't the blind, doting father she had taken for granted. I was a man with a plan, a man who had seen the truth. And it was time for the curtain to fall. I called a family meeting that evening. Sharon, surprised by my sudden request, sat on the sofa, her face a question mark. Cassia, a picture of false innocence, sat across from me, her phone in her lap, her leg bouncing with barely contained impatience. I took a deep breath, the words a bitter taste in my mouth. I have an announcement to make. Sharon's eyes widened, her hands clasped together. Cassia stopped bouncing her leg, a flicker of interest in her eyes. I could almost hear the silent question, "Is this about the car?" I let a small, humorless smile touch my lips. For years I've told you that Phoenix Technologies is my legacy. That it's all for you, Cassia. Your future. Cassia smiled, a wide, expectant grin. Sharon looked at me, a soft, encouraging look on her face. She was so close to the truth, yet so far away. Well, I continued, my voice firm and unwavering, I've decided to sell the company. The words hung in the air, a devastating silence. Cassia's smile faltered, a look of confusion crossing her face. Sharon gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Elias, what? You can't be serious. This is your life's work, she exclaimed. I looked at her, then at Cassia, whose face had now paled, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. I am. I've already signed the papers. The deal is done. The company is no longer mine. I watched as Cassia's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Her eyes darted from my face to Sharon's, a look of sheer panic. Dad, wait, why? She stammered. What about my inheritance? My trust fund? She asked, the words tumbling out in a rush, a clear indication of her true concern. There won't be an inheritance, Cassia, I said, my voice low and cold. The money from the sale will all be going to charity, a foundation for young, aspiring entrepreneurs, people who will actually use their talent and hard work to build something of their own, something you never learned how to do. The color drained from her face. The silence in the room was deafening. Sharon was staring at me in disbelief, her mind trying to process the information. Cassia's eyes, no longer filled with feigned remorse, were now filled with a cold, blinding rage. The mask had fallen. The true face of her betrayal, a cold and calculating monster, was now out in the open. I had seen this face before in the glow of her phone, in the sterile hospital room, and now she had nowhere to hide. The aftermath of my announcement was a firestorm. The quiet, polite facade of our family was shattered, revealing the ugly, bitter reality beneath. Cassia's shock quickly morphed into a furious, venomous rage. She screamed at me, her voice a shrill, ugly sound I had never heard before. "You can't do this. This is my money, my life. You promised," she shrieked, her face a grotesque mask of fury. The words were a bitter validation of everything I had seen on my computer screen, everything I had felt in that hospital bed. She didn't care about me. She cared about what I could give her. My wife, Sharon, was caught in the middle, a bewildered spectator to the full-blown tantrum of her daughter. She tried to reason with Cassia, to calm her down, but her words were like water on a raging fire. "I promised you a future, Cassia, not a handout," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "I promised you a legacy, but a legacy isn't something you inherit, it's something you earn." My words were a slap in the face. She lunged at me, her hands balled into fists, but Sharon pulled her back, holding her tight. "Cassia, stop! What has gotten into you?" Sharon cried, her voice trembling. Cassia looked at her, a bitter, accusatory look in her eyes. "He's doing this because I left him at the hospital," she snarled. "He's punishing me. He's a monster." The words hung in the air, a silent accusation. My wife's eyes darted from Cassia to me, her face a mix of confusion and dawning horror. She didn't know the whole story. She didn't know the depth of Cassia's betrayal. I watched as Cassia's carefully constructed world crumbled around her. She was a princess who had just been told she was living in a paper castle. She stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was a cold, brittle thing. Sharon turned to me, her eyes filled with a deep, silent anguish. "Elias, what have you done? You've destroyed her. She hates you." Her voice was a soft, broken whisper. I looked at her. This good, kind woman who had been so blind for so long. "I haven't destroyed her, Sharon. She destroyed herself. I'm just letting her face the consequences. The truth." I didn't tell her about the Guardian program, about the text messages, the plans, the truth I had discovered. I knew she had to see it for herself. She had to feel the full weight of her daughter's betrayal. Over the next few weeks, our home was a battlefield. Cassia refused to talk to me. She was a ghost in the house, a sullen, resentful presence. Her friends started to drop her, their loyalty as thin as her own. The parties stopped. The shopping sprees were over. She had nothing left to offer them. Her boyfriend, Caleb, dropped her for a new girl with a trust fund. I watched it all, a cold, detached observer. My Guardian program a silent witness to her fall. I saw her crying in her room, a real, genuine sadness that had nothing to do with me, and everything to do with her loss of privilege. The revenge was working. The money was gone. Her friends were gone. Her life, the one she had so carefully curated, was falling apart. Sharon was a silent, sorrowful figure in the house, a mediator in a war she didn't understand. She saw her daughter's pain and my cold, unyielding resolve. She tried to talk to me, to make me change my mind. "Elias, please, this is too much. You're being too harsh. She's our daughter," she pleaded one evening, her eyes full of tears. I looked at her, and for the first time I felt the pain of my own actions. My revenge was hurting her too, but there was no going back. The die had been cast. She chose her path, Sharon. I'm just letting her walk it. She left me in that hospital bed. She left me there to die. She didn't even call. She didn't care. Now she knows what it feels like to be abandoned, I said, my voice thick with emotion. The truth in its raw, ugly form hung in the air between us. My wife stared at me, her eyes wide with a dawning, terrible understanding. The truth was finally starting to sink in. The next morning the house was eerily silent. Cassia was gone. I found a hastily scribbled note on the kitchen counter. "I'm going to a friend's house. Don't worry about me." It was a lie, I knew it. My Guardian program had been tracking her phone's location. She had gone to Caleb's house. I knew this was coming. She was going to beg him for money, for help, for a way out. My heart, a lump of cold stone in my chest, felt nothing. I was a man on a mission. A man who had seen too much, and it was time for the final act. I walked into Sharon's office. She was sitting at her desk, her face in her hands. She looked up, her eyes red and puffy. "She left, Elias, she just left," she whispered, her voice a broken sigh. "She can't stand to be in the same house as you." I sat across from her, my voice low and serious. "Sharon, there's something you need to see. Something I should have shown you a long time ago." I opened my laptop, the screen a glowing testament to my obsession. I showed her the Guardian program. I showed her the text messages, the video clips, the photos. I showed her the real Cassia. The one who had laughed about my stupid tech stuff. The one who had called me the bank. I showed her the messages from the night of my hospital stay. Cassia's texts to her friends, bragging about her freedom, her plans to party, her total disregard for my life. The betrayal wasn't a mistake. It was a conscious choice, a cold, deliberate act of selfishness. Sharon watched, her face a horrifying mix of disbelief, shame, and heartbreak. She saw the girl she had raised, the girl she had protected, for what she truly was, a stranger. The betrayal was not just mine. It was hers too. She had defended a monster. The girl she had loved was gone, replaced by a ghost in her machine. The truth was a physical weight, a crushing blow to her soul. She started to sob, a deep, guttural sound that shook her entire body. "I don't understand," she sobbed, her voice a broken whisper. "How could she do this? How could she be so cruel?" I didn't say anything. I just let her watch, let her see the full, unvarnished truth of our daughter's heart. Meanwhile, Cassia's plan was falling apart. Caleb, the boy who had once fawned over her, turned his back on her. "What's the point of dating a girl with no money?" he said, his voice a cruel, dismissive sneer. He blocked her number, and his friends laughed at her. She was a pariah, a ghost in a world that she had once ruled. She went to her other friends, the ones she had promised to party with, the ones she had taken on vacations. But they were all the same. They saw her for what she was, a girl with nothing left to offer. The money was gone. The perks were gone. Her friends were gone. She was alone. Truly, terribly alone. She returned home late that night, a broken, defeated figure. Her makeup was streaked with tears. Her clothes were disheveled. She walked into the living room where Sharon and I were sitting in a terrible, silent tableau. She looked at me, a cold, desperate look in her eyes. "Dad, please," she said, her voice a hoarse whisper. "Give me my money back. I'll do anything. I'll be good. I'll go to college. I'll get a job." Her words were a desperate plea, but they were tainted by the selfishness beneath. I looked at her, my heart a solid block of ice. It was time for her to face the final, most devastating truth. "Cassia, I can't. The money is gone. And even if I could, I wouldn't. Not after what I've seen. Not after what you did to me in that hospital bed. Not after what you did to your mother and to yourself." Her eyes widened. She looked at Sharon, her face a question mark. Sharon didn't say a word. She just looked at her, her eyes filled with a deep, bottomless sorrow. A sorrow that spoke of a love that had been betrayed, a trust that had been shattered. Cassia finally understood. The game was over. She had lost everything. Cassia's face crumpled, the last vestiges of her defiance draining away. She fell to her knees, her sobs a raw, animalistic sound. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," she wailed. But the words were hollow, a frantic attempt to mend a bridge that had been burned to the ground. Sharon, her heart a raw wound, got up and walked away, unable to bear the sight of her daughter's theatrical display. She had seen the truth. She had seen the real Cassia, and the sight had broken her. Cassia looked at me, her eyes red and puffy, begging for a forgiveness that was not mine to give. "Please, Dad, just a little, a small amount. I can't live like this. I have nothing," she pleaded. Her words were a perfect reflection of her life's philosophy, a life of privilege, not of hard work. You have a roof over your head, Cassia. You have clothes on your back. You have food in your stomach. What you don't have is an inheritance. What you don't have is friends. What you don't have is a future you didn't earn. You have the same thing I had when I started out. Nothing, I said, my voice cold and hard. You have your life. You have your talent. You have your mind. What you do with them is up to you. But you won't be doing it on my dime. You had your chance. You had everything. And you chose to let it all go. The words were a bitter pill, a dose of reality that she had never had to swallow before. She was alone, truly alone, with nothing but the echo of her own selfishness. Over the next few months, Cassia became a ghost in our own home. She was a sullen, resentful presence, a constant reminder of the war we had fought and the peace we had lost. She got a part-time job at a local coffee shop. The money she made was barely enough to cover her daily expenses. She was forced to take the bus, to wear the same clothes, to eat cheap food. I watched her, a silent observer, as she navigated a world she had once looked down upon. I saw her frustration, her humiliation, her slow, painful descent into the real world. She tried to connect with her old friends, but they ignored her calls, deleted her from their social media. She was a reminder of a life they had all moved on from. She was a ghost. My relationship with Sharon was strained, a fragile truce in a war that had left us both scarred. She had seen the truth, but the pain of her daughter's betrayal was a constant, gnawing ache. She was torn between her love for her daughter and her loyalty to me. She was a woman who had given her heart to two people, and both had been broken. We talked, we argued, we cried. We were two people who had lost our way, and were trying to find our way back to each other. We had to build our marriage from the ground up, on a foundation of honesty and trust, a foundation that had been shattered by a child we no longer recognized. One evening, I found Cassia sitting on the kitchen floor, a small box of instant noodles in her hand, her eyes filled with tears. She looked at me, and for the first time I saw something in her eyes other than rage or entitlement. I saw shame. "I'm so sorry, Dad," she whispered, her voice a broken, fragile thing. "I was so stupid, so selfish. I didn't know I didn't say anything." I just looked at her, a girl who was finally seeing the world for what it was, a girl who had to learn the hard way. The revenge was complete. I had taken everything from her, and in doing so, I had given her something she never had before, a chance to start over, a chance to be someone else. I walked away, leaving her there alone with her thoughts and her shame. The revenge was over. The healing was about to begin. 2 years passed, 2 long silent years. Cassia moved out, finding a small dingy apartment and a full-time job at the coffee shop. She was a different person. The girl who had once spent thousands on a single handbag was now a woman who carefully budgeted her grocery money. She had stopped calling, stopped trying to reconcile. Our contact was limited to a few terse text messages on holidays. Sharon, in her quiet, persistent way, had tried to maintain a connection, but the wound was still too raw. The betrayal was a ghost that haunted our home. We had rebuilt our marriage, our love for each other stronger than ever, forged in the fires of betrayal and loss. But the hole in our family was a constant, aching void. We were a family of 2, a man and a woman who had lost their daughter. One evening, as I was working late in my home office, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer it, but something told me to. "Hello?" I said, my voice a question. The voice on the other end was hesitant, a little shy. "Dad? It's me, Cassia." My heart, a lump of cold stone, ached with a sudden sharp pain. "Cassia." I said the word a whisper. "What is it?" There was a long silence on the other end, a deep, heavy pause. I just wanted to say thank you." Her words hung in the air, a shocking, unexpected statement. My mind went blank. "Thank you? For what?" I asked, my voice a mix of confusion and disbelief. For everything, she said, her voice filled with a genuine, heartfelt emotion. She told me about her life, about her job, about her struggles, about how she had learned to stand on her own 2 feet, about how she had learned the value of $1. She told me about how she had started taking night classes at a community college, majoring in business. She told me about how she was building her own life, a life she was proud of. "I was a monster, Dad," she said, her voice trembling. "I was so selfish, so entitled. I didn't see you. I didn't see Mom. I just saw what you could give me. I was so angry at you for taking away my money, but now I understand. You didn't take anything from me. You gave me a chance to be a person, a chance to be a woman I could be proud of." The words were like a balm on an old festering wound. The cold, hard shell of my heart was starting to crack. She told me about the night of my hospital stay. She told me about how she'd gone to the concert, but she couldn't enjoy it. How she had felt a deep, gnawing guilt. How she had gone back to the hospital, only to find the room empty, and a nurse who told her I was in the ICU. She told me about the shame, the regret, the self-hatred that had consumed her. She told me she had gone to the hospital every day for a week just to see me, to see if I was okay, to apologize. But she had been too scared, too ashamed. She had seen me, and she had seen the look on my face, the look of a man who had been betrayed. And she had run. The truth, the whole truth, was now out in the open. The revenge was complete. And a new chapter was about to begin. I sat there, my mind reeling, my heart overflowing with an emotion I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Hope. "Cassia," I said, my voice thick with emotion. I love you, honey. I've always loved you." There was a small, fragile sob on the other end of the line. "I know, Dad, I know," she said. "I'm so sorry." The words were a simple plea for forgiveness, but they were filled with a lifetime of pain and regret. I looked at the dark, silent house. My wife was sleeping, her face serene. I knew what I had to do. I had to forgive. Not for her, but for myself. The revenge had served its purpose. It had taught her a lesson she would never forget. It was time for a new lesson, a lesson in grace, a lesson in love, a lesson in forgiveness. The game was over. The healing had begun. The phone call was a turning point. It had opened a door that had been sealed shut for years. I told Sharon about the conversation, and her reaction was a flood of tears. Relief, happiness, and a deep, aching hope. "She's coming home," she whispered, her voice filled with a trembling excitement. I had asked Cassia to come home for dinner the following week. She had agreed. And for the first time in a long time, the house felt like a home again. It was a day of nervous excitement. We cleaned the house, cooked her favorite meal, and set the table with the good china. My heart hammered in my chest, a drumbeat of anticipation. I was a father again. Cassia arrived, a little nervous, a little shy. She was a different person. The expensive clothes were gone, replaced by a simple dress and a quiet confidence. She looked us in the eye, her posture straight, her smile genuine. She hugged her mother, a tight, long hug filled with a silent understanding. Then she turned to me. She didn't say anything. She just looked at me, her eyes filled with a deep, silent gratitude. She reached out and hugged me, a long, genuine hug that spoke of a love that had been lost and found again. I held her, my eyes filled with tears. The cold, hard shell of my heart had finally melted. The revenge was over. The forgiveness was here. We sat down for dinner, and for the first time in years it was a real family dinner. We talked, we laughed, we shared stories. We talked about her new job, her classes, her hopes and dreams for the future. She had a maturity, a wisdom that was a direct result of her hardship. She was a phoenix who had risen from the ashes of her old life. She was a new person, a better person. My wife and I looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between us. The pain was still there, but it was a dull ache now, a memory of a war that had been won. The family was a family again, a new family, built on a foundation of honesty, forgiveness, and love. After dinner, as Cassia was getting ready to leave, I stopped her. "Cassia," I said, "there's something I need to tell you. Something you need to know." My wife looked at me, a question in her eyes. I had to tell her the whole truth, all of it. I had to confess my part in the revenge. I told her about the Guardian program, about how I had watched her, tracked her, seen the ugly truth of her betrayal. I told her that I had known she was leaving the hospital, that I had let her go because I needed to know. I needed to see for myself. I told her that I had orchestrated the whole thing. The sale of the company, the destruction of her life. I had been a ghost in her machine, a silent watcher, a man who had planned her downfall. Her face, a picture of newfound happiness, slowly crumpled. Her eyes filled with a fresh new pain. She looked at me, and her eyes were no longer filled with gratitude. They were filled with betrayal. The revenge, a bitter taste in my mouth, was now turning on me. I had to let her see the full picture, the full ugly truth of my actions. I had to let her see that I was not a hero in this story. I was a man who had been hurt, and a man who had hurt in return. My revenge had been a necessary evil, a bitter medicine that had healed her. But it had also left a new wound, a wound that had to be healed too, a wound of a father's betrayal. The forgiveness was a fragile, delicate thing, and I had just broken it. The silence in the room was a living thing, a heavy, suffocating blanket. Cassia's face, once bright with hope, was now a mask of cold, quiet devastation. She looked at me, and her eyes were filled with a deep, silent accusation. You watched me?" she whispered, her voice a small, broken sound. "You tracked my every move. You knew I was going to leave you at the hospital, and you let me go." Her voice rose with each word, a new wave of anger and betrayal washing over her. She turned to Sharon, a silent plea for an explanation. Sharon looked at me, a silent question in her eyes. She had known some of the truth, but not all of it. Not the whole ugly, manipulative truth. She was seeing me for the first time, too. "I had to know, Cassia," I said, my voice thick with a raw, desperate honesty. "I had to see for myself. I had to know if you would choose a party over my life. And you did. You left me there. You left me there to die." The words were a bitter truth, a final, unvarnished look at the past. But she wasn't listening. She was focused on my betrayal, on the way I had manipulated her, on the way I had watched her fall. "So you're not a hero, Dad," she said, her voice filled with a cold, cutting sarcasm. "You're a spy. You're a manipulator. You're just as selfish as I was." Her words were a truth, a painful, brutal truth that I had to face. I had been so focused on her sins that I had forgotten my own. I had become the very thing I had hated. She stormed out of the house, the door slamming behind her, a terrible echo of her previous departure. The revenge had come full circle. I had hurt her, and now she was hurting me. The forgiveness was gone. The hope was gone. We were back where we started. Two people, broken and alone, caught in a cycle of pain and betrayal. Sharon looked at me, her face a mix of pain and silent rage. "Elias," she said, her voice a dangerous whisper, "what have you done?" She walked away, leaving me alone in the silent, broken house. The revenge was not over. It had just changed its face. It was no longer a revenge against her. It was a revenge against me. A self-inflicted wound. I sat there in the silent, empty house, the ghost of my daughter's anger a constant, gnawing presence. I had wanted to teach her a lesson, to make her a better person. And I had. She had learned the value of hard work, of sacrifice, of a life earned. But I had also taught her a new lesson. A lesson in betrayal. A lesson in a father's cruelty. The revenge was a double-edged sword. It had cut her, but it had also cut me. I had won the battle, but I had lost the war. The war for our family. The war for our love. I had to do something. I had to fix this. I had to find a way to earn her forgiveness. I had to find a way to show her that my love was not a lie, that it was not a tool of manipulation. It was a love that had been hurt, a love that had been lost, but a love that was still there, waiting to be found. I knew what I had to do. I had to show her that I was willing to sacrifice everything for her. Just as I had once sacrificed my life for her, I had to sacrifice my dignity, my pride, my everything. I had to show her that I was a broken man, a man who had made a terrible mistake. I had to show her that I was willing to be a ghost in her world, just to be close to her. The revenge was over. The reckoning was about to begin. The final chapter. The final act of love. A love that had to be earned. I spent the next few weeks trying to reach Cassia. My calls went unanswered. My texts were left on read. The door to her small apartment remained locked. I knew she was hurting. I had to let her have her space. I had to let her process the terrible truth. But I wasn't giving up. I was a man on a mission to win back the love of my daughter. A love I had so cruelly, so deliberately almost destroyed. My wife Sharon was a quiet, supportive presence in my life. She had been hurt, but she had also seen my pain. She had seen my regret. She knew that my revenge had been a terrible mistake, and that my love for our daughter was real. I started a new ritual. Every morning I would get up early, drive to the coffee shop where she worked, and sit in a corner booth. I would order the same coffee, and I would just watch her. I was a ghost again, a silent observer. But this time I wasn't watching to betray her. I was watching to love her. I watched her as she worked, her movements confident and efficient. I watched her as she smiled at her customers, her smile genuine and warm. I watched her as she talked to her co-workers, her voice filled with a kind, friendly tone. She was a good person, a kind person, a woman who had been forged in the fires of her own mistakes. I had been wrong. She wasn't a monster. She was just a girl who had been spoiled. And I had spoiled her. One morning as she was wiping down the counter, she saw me. She froze, her eyes wide with shock. She looked at me for a long, silent moment. She looked at the old man in the corner, the man who had ruined her life. But she also saw the love in his eyes, the pain, the regret. She walked towards me, her heart a drumbeat of confusion and anger. "What are you doing here, Dad?" she whispered, her voice a mix of frustration and quiet fear. "I just wanted to see you," I said, my voice a whisper. "I wanted to be here. I wanted to be close to you." My words were a simple truth, a simple plea. She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. "Why?" she asked, her voice a broken sob. "Why did you do it? Why did you hurt me so much?" Her words were a new wound, a new wave of pain. I looked at her and I told her the truth. The whole truth. I was a ghost, Cassia. I had built a company, a life, a family. But I had lost you. I was a man who had given everything and had nothing in return. I was an empty man. I saw your betrayal and I knew I had to do something. I had to get your attention. I had to make you see. I was so afraid of losing you that I almost destroyed you. The words were a bitter confession, a final, painful truth. She sat down, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. She looked at me, a long, quiet look, and then she reached out and took my hand. "Dad," she said, her voice filled with a newfound maturity and wisdom, "you didn't destroy me. You saved me. You gave me a life I never knew I could have. You showed me that I was stronger than I thought. You showed me that I could be a person, not a princess. You showed me that I could be a woman I could be proud of." Her words were a final, unexpected gift, a gift of forgiveness, a gift of love. I looked at her and I smiled. A real, genuine smile. The kind of smile that comes from the heart. A smile that had been lost for a long, long time. The revenge was over. The forgiveness was here. I had lost a daughter and I had found a woman who was stronger, smarter, and kinder than I had ever been. We were a family again, a new family, A family of three, bound not by blood or money, but by a shared history of pain and a shared future of love. I had looked into the face of my enemy, and I had found my daughter. And she had looked into the face of her betrayer, and she had found her father. The circle was complete. The story was over. And the healing had just begun. Thank you for listening to my story. If this story moved you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more tales of family betrayal.